Hello and welcome to the August edition of Our Faith, Our Diocese. I'm Dan Gallagher. By now, many of you are aware of the statewide grand jury report on child sexual abuse within the Catholic Church of Pennsylvania. If you have seen or read about the investigation, you will know that the Diocese of Scranton was included in the report. The video to follow is a message from Bishop Bambera in response to the findings highlighted in the report. Because this is a sensitive topic, please be aware that he will be discussing the report at length. The following message, as well as some additional information and materials, will also be available on the Diocese of Scranton's website. Thank you for your attention.
Dear friends, I want to speak with you about a critical matter confronting the Diocese of Scranton and other dioceses in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Many of you are aware of the statewide grand jury investigation into child sexual abuse within the Catholic Church. The grand jury has issued its report of findings. While this is an uncomfortable and unsettling topic, we must speak openly and frankly about it. First of all, none of you deserve to be confronted with the behavior described in this report. It is unsettling, tragic, and it breaks your heart. To all of you, most especially to those of you who are victims of such heinous actions by members of the clergy, to those of you who have suffered because of misguided and inappropriate decisions of church leaders, and to those of you who make up the blessed faithful of our church, who are simply trying to live your lives as sincere and committed servants of the Lord, I offer my deepest apologies for such behavior and for the consequences of this tragic reality in our church. There are simply no words that I can offer to take away the pain that this has caused. Simply put, child sexual abuse cannot be tolerated and must be eradicated from our church. Sadly, the church has taken far too long to do that. While the investigation and report represent a disturbing and painful chapter in the life of our church, it is necessary for us to address them in order for us to move ahead in a more positive way. The Diocese of Scranton fully supported and cooperated completely with the work of the grand jury. This included providing hundreds of thousands of pages of documents covering the past 70 years and a detailed statement describing how the diocese responds to allegations of child sexual abuse. The grand jury report addresses a dark and difficult time in our 150-year history. Many of the cases that were presented in the grand jury report are not new to you, particularly those that surfaced in recent years. Some cases, however, are not known to most of you and reveal details that are quite unsettling. Compounding the disturbing nature of these cases is the fact that many of you have known and trusted one or more of these clergymen and are now confronted with feelings of betrayal and anger. Even more unsettling are instances where church leaders made decisions that placed children in harm's way. You have a right to be angry. I am angry too. While such behavior is unacceptable in any element of society, it is particularly abhorrent in the church, which calls us all to something better. And we have made changes to be better. Since I became bishop in 2010, the diocese has implemented many changes to improve how we handle allegations of abuse. We strictly adhere to a zero-tolerance policy on abuse. We immediately notify law enforcement of all allegations of abuse. We notify Pennsylvania Childline. We remove abusers from ministry and immediately notify the parish and the public. And we provide all necessary support to victims, knowing that the healing process can be difficult and lengthy. To demonstrate our commitment to transparency, long before we were made aware of the grand jury investigation, we provided a comprehensive list of all accused members of the clergy and their current status to every district attorney in each of our 11 counties. Now, while properly handling such allegations is critical, our utmost goal is stopping abuse altogether and protecting the children in our diocese. All clergy, volunteers, and employees must have criminal background and child abuse clearances. Every person is trained extensively on sexual abuse prevention, reporting, victim advocacy, and more. Since 2003, we have trained more than 28,000 adults in child protection awareness. We also teach our children in grades K through 12 how to recognize and report inappropriate behavior. Once again, as your bishop, I am deeply sorry for the hurt that these behaviors have brought to our church, and like you, I am heartbroken for the victims who have suffered. While much good work has been and continues to be done through the generous and faithful service of so many of our clergy, the behavior detailed in this report is both disturbing and painful for you, and especially to the victims who have suffered so much. I would hope that your trust in the Church can be restored at some point. I know that will take time and will only happen when you encounter behavior on the part of our clergy, bishops, priests, and deacons alike, that warrants such trust. Our faith in Jesus promises us the crosses of this world, no matter how painful, always give way to life, hope, and peace. While none of us can change the past, I pray that we learn from it in order to create a better world in the parishes and schools that make up the Diocese of Scranton. I will continue to do all that I can to ensure the safety and well-being of our children and to lead a church that once again enables you to trust, to have hope, and to find peace. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Since the founding of our diocese 150 years ago, communication technology has changed tremendously. However, one thing hasn't changed: the diocese's commitment to sharing the good news. In our next segment, we'll see how the Church of Scranton continues to use every media at its disposal in order to more fully engage faithful in the life and mission of the Church.
The way of proclaiming the gospel 150 years ago when this diocese was founded is very different than the way in which it's proclaimed today. I guarantee you, I'm the 10th Bishop of Scranton. None of my predecessors used Twitter. I do. What is so significant, however, and at times can be a real challenge, is how we translate the message into the particular lives that we are encountering, into this particular era in which we live. Not to modify the message, but to translate it and to communicate it in a way that's both understandable and meaningful.
The Catholic Light was launched in 1901 by private publishers before being purchased by the diocese in 1922. It delivered local, national, and international church news on a weekly basis for over 50 years. Today, the Catholic Light reaches its 50,000 subscribers every 3 weeks.
From its inception as the official publication of the Diocese of Scranton, The Catholic Light newspaper was led by 7 priest editors until August of 1985, when announcement was made of the historic appointment of Arthur F. Perry as the first layman to serve as editor-in-chief.
As the world develops and changes, so too will people and the church, to make sure that the gospel message will always be most effectively proclaimed. Telecommunications, mass communication, the internet, all of those things have played a major role in the changes in the life of our society and in the church, the ways that we evangelize.
The procession into the church took about a half hour. Leading the way were some 400 diocesan priests and representatives from various religious denominations.
I think it's amazing when I look to the time when Bishop John O'Connor was here and established an Office of Communications, named a lay director, established Catholic television, enlarged our communication tools, and I think he lit the fire in a whole new way in that chapter.
It was, 1983, and I was a local reporter at WDAU and an anchor. And he said, "I'm looking for someone just like you." And so I quit my job and I went to work for him. And there was no other layperson ever in a job like that in the diocese. So it really was a pivotal point, I think. And he was a pioneer back then.
I ask that you pray for one thing, that each day of my life, I give God permission to reach out and touch you.
Back then, you would never think of approaching the bishop or the priest ever to have a conversation, certainly not talk about the issues. You saw your local priest or the bishop on special occasions or at Sunday Mass. So his idea was we had to go out and we had to hear the people, we had to listen to the people. He went out into the diocese and we did what were like town hall meetings to talk to people. And I came along with a TV crew to document everything.
It was a joyous celebration shared by many families.
He felt strongly that you needed to use the medium. You needed to use the media in order to reach the people. And he really wanted to establish a platform for doing that, using all means of communications, radio, television, newspapers. All the work that went after that, it just grew by leaps and bounds. And congratulations to Bishop Timlin for his commitment and all he did to make it happen following Cardinal O'Connor's departure.
The birth of CTV, Catholic Television of the Diocese of Scranton, is often equated with a monumentous press conference on January 26, 1987, when Bishop James C. Timlin announced significant agreements ensuring the future of the diocesan TV station with local cable television pioneers Joe Gans, owner of Northeast Cable in Dunmore, Jim Tedesco, manager of Verto Cable, and Ed Gans, manager of Service Electric Cable in Wilkes-Barre.
Today, Catholic television produces live broadcasts of daily weekday masses, as well as the annual Novena to St. Anne, celebrated each July from the Passionist-run Basilica of the National Shrine of St. Anne in West Scranton. Their flagship program, Our Faith, Our Diocese, provides news and human interest stories from around the 11 counties on a monthly basis.
I see how we communicate today. I know that the church moves at a different pace than the world, but it does get there. And perhaps more than any other institution, it has consistently communicated the word in a way that has survived more than 2,000 years and still challenges, persuades, and encourages people to live their lives in a different way.
Dedicated on July 27, 1854 by Bishop John Newman, Saints Philip and James Church here in Sugar Ridge has a long, rich history of serving faithful from around Sullivan and Bradford counties. The church was later dedicated as a shrine to St. John Newman. In our next segment, we'll see how young Catholics from around our diocese have given up part of their summer vacation in order to restore this beautiful piece of history. Steve, you have a long history of working with young people on projects such as this. You've done Habitat for Humanity many, many times. As I understand, we're referring to this as Habitat for Divinity. Why do you think projects like this are so important for these young people? What are you hoping they get out of this?
Well, we always know that service is something that our young people across the board of, believers, non-believers, it's just something that they connect with. And this time around, we just had the opportunity to connect them with something a little bit more spiritual than a Habitat for Humanity. And the reason why I think it's important is because they get to see an end result. They get to see a project finished. They get to see the result of all their hours and hours of time put into this, but they also get that connection to one another, and they come out of this feeling almost like a family, not only with the group that was here, but with the people we've been interacting with for the entire week. We've had countless people stop by and tell us their story and tell us how much the shrine has meant and how many of their relatives, are in the cemetery here. There's a huge personal connection with this shrine to the people of the area.
Father, for the benefit of people who may not be familiar with the history behind this holy site, tell me a little bit about that and the role that St. John Newman played in making this a reality.
Yeah, he had a big role in making this a reality. He became bishop in 1852, and in 1854 he visited this site in, Overton? Overton, at the McGarity farm, I believe. It was a chapel there. And he came because he was bishop. He wanted to visit the people of his diocese, which was enormous. And I believe her name was Ellen Leahy, walked the 4 miles there to be at that Mass. And she said, Bishop Newman, there are a lot of people out in Sugar Ridge who can't make it, and they need you. Come there. He walked 4 miles with her back, spent the night, said Mass in their farm, saw the enormity of the crowds and said, you need a church here yourself. And they built one. They built a log cabin church, some 200 feet from what you're seeing now. And if it wasn't for her walking that 4 miles to Mass and then encouraging him to come, he didn't need much encouragement. He was a great walker. And he came with her. But if it wasn't for that interchange, this would not be here. And that little log cabin church, in a very short time, became too small for the growing numbers. And so this date I'm not so certain about, but I think it's 1888. This church was built then. Same name, St. Philip and James, so the name is the same, but the church is different. And many of the tombstones that you see here are those original people, those original Irish settlers who was such an important part of the growing church at that time.
Father, when you come here today and you see all these young people giving of themselves, their time and their service to refurbish this church, how does that inspire you, their witness of faith?
I can't even begin to tell you the enormity of their importance in the church. Just very, very quickly, if St. John Newman did anything spectacular as a bishop, it was to erect churches. He erected almost close to 100 churches in the short time he was bishop, 8 years. He was all about building and making it present. That's why that log cabin church came. Today, unfortunately, the church is very much experiencing the opposite. Churches are coming down. They're closing up. When I see these young people here giving of their time, their energy, and sharing their faith together to restore this beautiful chapel in God's country for John Newman and for the people of God, they are doing exactly the work that he came to this country to do, and that was to make God's kingdom present. And they're doing it so beautifully. So they greatly inspire me, and I go back a much better priest than when I came here. These young people are doing the work that John Newman came here to do, building up the Church of God at a time when so many churches are coming down. And that they really are, he would never want us to talk about him. He would want us to talk about Christ. Well, these young people are doing the work of the kingdom of God. They're doing the work of discipleship. They're really showing us what a disciple of Christ today is all about. And they're quite beautiful.
Do you think St. John Neumann is looking down upon us today with a smile, seeing these young people and what they're doing?
I know he is. They were among his very favorites.
John, tell me a little bit about this project and why you and Rick and Mr. Wallow were so excited about getting this off the ground.
Well, I mean, it starts around the kids first. It's all about the kids. And he was looking for a project, and he mentioned it to me, and I had an idea. And I suggested this, the idea of Habitat for Divinity, because there was a real need here. We're a small parish, and it's difficult to maintain it. And having the kids come up here, with experience with the Habitat for Humanity that Steve has run in the past, I knew what they could do, and they haven't disappointed us. They've been amazing.
Rick, speaking of that, how inspired are you by these young people and their faith, the fact that they'd be willing to give up part of their vacation to work on this church?
So the best way I can relegate it is yesterday, of course, we had some sun in the project, thank the Lord, for a little bit. And they were lined up 4 foot apart. Everybody had a paintbrush, 80 foot long on the church, and they're going to town painting. And if you weren't inspired by that, and every one of them having a good time. There's not been one issue all week long with them. They've just absolutely been wonderful. And when it came to the Stations of the Cross, they were all fully engaged. Just a great group of youngsters.
John, why does it mean so much for the faithful in this community to have this beautiful church behind us and have it refurbished?
A lot of it's history. We all have family, or a lot of us have family buried here. But we all kind of grew up coming to Masses here. And it keeps us in touch with our history. And maybe more importantly with John Neumann, because so many of the things that he faced in his time, immigration and boom and bust economies and polarization, the know-nothings that he had to deal with, we're dealing with now. And he's an inspiration to us on how to live.
Rick, when these young people leave after Mass this evening and they go home, as a result of their experience here, what are you hoping they take home with them?
I'm hoping to see them back here again, actually. Maybe not as a complete group to work in the church, although we would really welcome that, but back here for Mass, back here as they get older and they're driving around and said, hey, I spent a week here in the summer and it was rainy and it was a mess, but we had a great time and we worked on this church and we restored it. That's what I kind of like to see them come out here with and just be touched by St. John Neumann and the Lord.
Lucy, here you are with some of these other young people giving up part of your summer vacation so that you can work on this church. Why has this been such a wonderful experience for you?
Well, this is my first time ever doing anything like this. Like I'm only 15, so I've never really gone on any like mission trips like this. Like I didn't go to Habitat for Humanity like in West Virginia, and I feel like it was just incredible because I just see how much it means to all these people. Like their families are buried in the cemetery, and like they're like this church is like so like it's filled with rich history. It just means so much that I'm like fixing something that means so much to everybody.
Now you'll go to church and you'll hear someone like Monsignor Quinn talk about what it means to be a Christian and to be Christ for other people. Why do you think it's so important that young people do more than just listen and talk about it? They actually go out and live out their faith as you're doing this week.
Well, I feel like when you live out your faith, like even like if you're like volunteering and like this, like it really just touches so many people's lives. And like it was kind of miserable in the beginning of the week, like it was raining and like a mess. But like now that I'm here, like it's getting finished up, like it's just so beautiful and it feels so good. It's like if you're not gonna do it for other people, like do it like just so like it feels nice, and then you're like, and then when you see that other people feel good, you feel good, and it's just everyone is happy. It's so nice.
Last question, how do you think this experience has touched your own faith and inspired it?
Like I definitely allow me to reflect on my day more. Like at the end of each night we do Christ moments where we see Christ in someone else, like they go out of their way, or like something just great happened, and maybe like reflect and like wow, like that, like whenever someone does something nice, it just means that much more to me because like I kind of see Christ in them, and I really enjoyed it. So.
Liz, like so many of the other young people here, you're giving up part of your summer in order to work on this church. Why have you been so excited about being part of this project?
I just think it's really special. Recently, not only in our diocese but all over the world, there's been a trend where a lot of churches have been being taken down or shut down, and I think the fact that this one's being restored, we might be saving it from that, and I think that's really special because it makes me feel really hopeful.
When you get involved in a project like this, how does it inspire your own faith?
It just makes me feel so much more welcomed as a community, because to know that there are other people beyond my own community, my own parish, that are believing the same things as me, and all of that just definitely, it grows my faith.
Why do you think today more than ever young people like yourself need to get more involved and get involved in living out the gospel message instead of just sitting in a church pew?
Well, I definitely think that Jesus intended for us to be disciples. He intended for us to go out, and that was what he told his disciples to do in the Gospels, and I think that we should heed his advice and do what he wants us to do, carry out his will. And I think that it starts with projects like this and doing service and helping out other communities and other people.
Liz, when I've done stories similar to this and I've talked to young people involved in service projects, they often say it's a life-changing experience, and they often refer about the friendships that are formed during these service trips. Why is that such a special part of it, having the opportunity to make new friends with other young Catholics who share your faith and zeal for being Christ for others?
Me and the girls who are here with me, the friendships that I made are priceless. The kind of people that you meet here, they're just not like the ones that I know from home. It's hard to sometimes find people who have the same morals and the same values that I do, but once I do find those people, it's such a blessing to know them because they understand me better than almost anyone ever could. It's just beautiful, and I think it's amazing that these people understand me so well.
After talking with a couple of these young people, they've mentioned it hasn't been the easiest week. You've had rain almost every single day, and yet they're all coming here with a smile on their face, ready to work. How inspired are you by these young people and their witness of faith?
It's not easy to go through a week like we've just had, with this deluge of rain, but I think, it comes down to the stories of the people that they've heard over the course of the week that's inspired them to just go forward and get the work done. And that's what really, wows me about it, is because, if it was just me out here on my own or just with a couple people, I'd be like, guys, let's just do another week, or let's just hire somebody to do this. But seeing them to do it makes me want to continue, further, and to the point where some of them are even saying, hey, whatever we don't get done now, can we come up like Labor Day weekend and finish? So there's still that sense of pride in trying to accomplish the project.
On July 9th, nearly 200 golfers from around the diocese gathered at the Blue Ridge Trail Golf Club in Mountaintop to take part in the 9th annual Vocations Golf Classic. As we'll see in our next segment, this annual tournament is a tangible sign of the financial and prayerful support that faithful in our diocese offer for those men studying for the priesthood.
God has blessed us with a beautiful day here at Blue Ridge Golf Club in Mountaintop, and we gathered to have our Vocations Classic. This year we expect a record number of golfers, and very generously God is blessing us for financial support to enhance our vocation efforts and to support the seminaries in their ongoing formation. There is a wonderful golf committee who has been meeting for the last several months, personally inviting, soliciting support, and to all of them we are most grateful. We look forward to Bishop Bambera joining us both to golf and also to spend some time with the foursomes. He will get his picture taken with them. Most of our seminarians are here today, and again it gives them a personal opportunity to say thank you. And also it gives the golfers an opportunity to interact with the seminarians and get to know, well, who is in formation and what is this all about? So in addition to the financial support that we will receive today, my hope as the Diocesan Director of Vocations and Seminarians is that we can invite possibilities, that we can ask everyone not only to pray and to support us financially, but to help identify and personally invite others to join us so that we might prepare for the future of our local church, the hope and the support that is, I would imagine, God's desire.
You got it. You guys got it.
Michael, can you share with us briefly a little bit of your own vocation story?
Yeah, I'm a member of St. Andre Bessette Parish in Wilkes-Barre, and I'm a recent graduate of King's College. Theology and philosophy were my majors. And before going into college, I was entering into a new transition in life, didn't really know where I wanted to be, had a lot of questions, and God thankfully led me through you, Father Don, helping me to discern a call to priesthood and enter seminary, take that next step. And, you know, God willing, I'll be ordained in 5 years after going to St. Mary's in Baltimore, and really just trying to further discern God's call for my life.
And what were some of the programs that kind of helped clarify or support you in your vocational discernment?
Yeah, there were a lot of programs that helped with my discernment. Quo Vadis summer program we run for high school age men. I was on the volunteer team helping for that past 4 years. XLT, some of the adoration services that the Diocese Vocations Office has held, as well as Light the Fire and different retreats and small gatherings.
And you've come here to this golf tournament the last couple of years as a volunteer. Now you're coming as a seminarian, and you're also going to play. You're looking forward to it?
I'm very much looking forward to playing this year. I think the team I have, it's my family members. We know each other well, and we're going to try our best to shoot a low score. But it's just a really great day and nice weather again, and we're going to enjoy our company, and we're going to thank the donors and all that they've done for us and continue to enjoy each other's presence.
And I'd like to ask Father Ryan Glenn, who is ordained 1 month ago today and certainly has been a recipient of your generosity in his formation for the last few years, to offer a prayer of blessing.
Let us begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this beautiful weather, and we thank you for the generosity of all the golfers. May you be with us in our friendly and fun competition, and may you especially inspire hearts of young men to respond to the call to serve as priests for our diocese. Bless us and bless all who are participating today. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
As long as the camera's running. Another burden. Man, there you go. There you go.
As the Diocese of Scranton continues to celebrate the 150th anniversary of its founding, Bishop Ambera made a point of coming up here to celebrate a liturgy at St. Augustine's in Silver Lake, Susquehanna County. As we'll see in our next segment, the faith in this particular community, which is the oldest church in the diocese, is still very much alive and vibrant. As part of our 150th anniversary celebration this year, why were you looking forward to this particular moment coming up to this particular church?
Well, this is where where the whole experience of Catholic faith began. Admittedly, a few years prior to the establishment of this church, there was a Catholic community in Bradford County near Wyalusing, but right on this site, Father O'Flynn, Jeremiah O'Flynn, who's buried just across the road in the beautiful parish cemetery, found a plot of land that he bought with his own money. I actually just heard today from somebody who probably knows the history a little bit better that he was given this plot of ground by a family, but at any rate, it was here that the first Catholic church was built in what we now know as the Diocese of Scranton. So literally, in this place was where the birth of the faith began for our local church, and it was just such a meaningful moment for me to not only come here and worship with a very vibrant faith community, very, very vibrant, after a 193 years of worship taking place on this site. That's really incredible. And then having the opportunity to visit the grave of Father O'Flynn was also quite meaningful.
So see, we were going to have everything covered, Bishop. There was no way that you were just going to come up, get out of the car, and walk in. Go on. Well, anyway, welcome. We're glad to have you here with us, and we know that you're going to enjoy our celebration after we leave here at Liturgy down at the picnic.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Father Kaz. And thanks to all of you. I realize now that maybe the more significant thing today is not the fact that this church has been here for 193 years on this site, but more the fact that I got your pastor in a horse and buggy. So we're grateful for whatever things we can accomplish. But wow, this is an incredible day for me, certainly to be with all of you. And it's been a long time since I've had the privilege of, I certainly have been in your parish, but it's been a long time since I've had the privilege of being here in this historic church. And it is so historic and so significant to the Diocese of Scranton, where the first church in our 11 counties that we now know as the diocese was erected. And I had the opportunity just a moment before Mass to walk over to the cemetery and offer a prayer at the grave of Father O'Flynn. Wow, such an incredible moment for me, realizing that he was ordained 205 years ago. And when you put that in perspective, and that he came here and literally helped to build this church, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, it just touches me so deeply. I hope it does for all of you. You worship here, many of you, every Sunday and during the course of every week. For you, this is just a normal experience of faith and a place where you can live out that faith and offer your prayers and your hopes and your dreams to the Lord. But for so many of us, this particular place is the seedbed for the faith that emerged and that we celebrate today. So, standing on the shoulders of so many who went before you, thank you to all of you who keep that faith alive. And so with gratitude in our hearts today, let us begin this Eucharist as we always do, by acknowledging our sins, and so prepare ourselves to celebrate these sacred mysteries.
Glory to God, glory to God, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people of good will.
A reading from the book of Exodus. The whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died at the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, as we sat by our flesh pots and ate our fill of bread? But you had to lead us into the desert to make the whole community die of famine."
In 1825, the story really began, didn't it? And it began right here, when the man whose grave I was privileged to visit right before this Mass began, Father Jeremiah O'Flynn, came from Ireland, took his own savings, and bought this plot of ground. Bought the ground right here and built a church. The first church in the territory that eventually, years later, in 1868, became known as the Diocese of Scranton. Now, you might know this history better than I do. The first church burned down shortly after it was built, but then this one was erected. And how privileged we are. What a blessing it is for all of us to sit in this space, in this building, on this ground that was the site of the first established, well-established Catholic community in this part of Pennsylvania. And look how God worked. Look how God worked from a tiny community of believers who worshiped and celebrated what we will celebrate in just a few moments. The same Eucharist, the same sacramental presence of Jesus that has sustained individuals for 2,000 years was first celebrated here on this plot of ground. And a church began to grow and flourish by the power of God. You have to work. You have to let go of the great gift and share it and spread it with others. But first, you have to do what we do here today. Come together as a community of believers. Open our hearts in faith and trust to the Lord present in the Eucharist. Allow God to take deeper root in our hearts. Give the Lord space to grow, and then ultimately take that faith and give it away. You've done a pretty good job for well over 150 years. Continue to do the wonderful work that makes this church such a beautiful example of faith and a home for so many who seek to experience the Lord in their lives. God bless you all, and thank you. The peace of the Lord be with you always.
And with your spirit. Let us offer each other the sign of peace.
Behold the Lamb of God. Behold him who takes away the sins of the world. Blessed are those called to the supper of the Lamb. Lord, I am not worthy should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed.
It's amazing to think that after 193 years, the people in this area are still committed to the church and their faith. What do you think that says about the Catholics that live in this region of the diocese?
Well, I think it just says it says a lot about people everywhere who continue to worship and to give their faith a life and an expression. It says that it's authentic. I think here that probably is proven by the fact that there's also a chicken dinner that we're going to that's been in existence for also 193 years. when you can put your money where your mouth is, that's also a good sign of something that's very, very authentic. And I don't mean to make light of it. It clearly is a place that looks to faith as a way forward.
Joe, so many of the parishioners here are so excited about being part of this event. You personally, why was it such a special liturgy?
Well, I think simply recognizing the continuity of the faith in a specific place is a great thing, and having Father Reichland back is a nice aspect of that, and really a good solid homily that focused on what's truly at the core of why we're here.
And you personally, you have a lot of history here in this particular community?
Of course, yeah. I grew up here. My father and his father's father and his great-grandfather grew up here.
Again, I don't know if you share your husband's excitement, but why were you so excited about this particular Mass today?
I think part of what the bishop was suggesting is that it's truly each of our responsibilities to carry the strength of the church. And it is wonderful to celebrate the institutional continuity, but it's also a marvelous reminder of our role in it.
Why does this church mean so much to you?
Well, probably because I've known that I've been here all the years. All my relatives are all over there, all across the lane. There is a lot of, a lot of my family all the way around. Well, my husband's family, I said they were all Monahans.
And what did you think of today's Mass with Bishop Bambera?
Oh, I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was beautiful. So in detail that I like to understand that, when they explained everything, which I think he did.
Maureen, everybody in this parish, we're so excited today. You personally, why did this Mass mean so much to you?
Well, I just felt like everybody who went before me and all those who sacrificed were here with us. Like, I just felt like it was full of all the generations before, and it was very touching.
And why was it a little bit extra special to have Bishop Bambera as the celebrant?
Because he made it so special today to come here and give it the respect that, where all the faith started here, and that the church is continuing. We're so happy.
Why were you so excited about this particular day?
Well, it's the bishop's spiritual leader, liturgical leader of this diocese, and us being the oldest parish, just to be, we're like the fringes of Siberia of the diocese, and to have him come and visit, it was a great honor.
Now, when you look at all the people here today that turned out for this Mass, what do you think that says about the Catholic faith here in this area after 190 plus years?
It's the faith is very, very strong. Myself, I'm a convert, and it was through my wife and the blessings that we received on our house that brought me into the faith. That it gave me the great love of the faith.
Why is it so unique when you think about it that this church, the oldest in the Diocese of Scranton, and is still very much alive today and still a beautiful facility, why are you so proud of this particular community?
It's just the way people come together. They'll dig down when they have to preserve it. There was a lot. We put a lot into this church knowing the bishop was coming, in just 4 months. And we just came together and got it to look the way it is today.
We come to you now from the University of Scranton's Retreat Center here at Chapman Lake for the annual summer gathering of seminarians. Before they go back to school this fall to resume their formation, this represents one last opportunity for these men to come together for a few days of fun, relaxation, prayer, and fellowship. Mark, for each individual, the story is slightly different, but for you personally, how and when did the call to the priesthood come about?
I started discerning formally during my time in college, my sophomore year in college. I felt the call as a very intense longing for the priesthood, and I was dating at the time, so it was kind of confusing, but I just remember, going to adoration, and, I would have marriage and priesthood juxtaposed to each other, and I'd feel just this longing and this desire for priesthood, and I was so confused, and I, just over the years, I talked to more priests about it, and, and I finally, decided this is where I need to be, so.
Mark, looking back over the last couple of years, tell me a little bit about the formation process and what you've experienced.
I've been in the seminary for 2 years. Prior to that, I was discerning with our vocations director. He helped me sort through like all these feelings and stuff like that. So, and then my time in the seminary has been really quite wonderful. So I gained a much greater appreciation for philosophy. That's what I was studying for the past 2 years. And I recently just got back from a 9-week program in Omaha, the Institute of Priestly Formation. So that was amazing. So,
looking at this particular gathering that occurs every August, why do you look forward to this opportunity to share some quality time with your fellow seminarians?
Yeah, so it's a great chance to rest and be with my brother seminarians. I don't see all of these guys too often, so when I get a chance to see them, it's really quite, it can be fun. So I really look forward to the camaraderie and the chance to grow together as brothers. So,
Mark, when you have an opportunity like this to get together with other seminarians who are sharing that same journey, does it make your vocation a little bit easier?
Oh yeah, even seeing Father Glenn celebrate Mass today and seeing his confidence and joy, you know, in his role as a priest. So it's always really inspiring seeing the people ahead of me, you know, being firm in their vocation. So it gives me a lot of hope. So.
Mark, for a young man who may be watching this interview today and is thinking about the priesthood but is still a little bit reluctant, maybe a little afraid, what do you think you would say to such an individual to encourage them to at least explore this possibility?
First thing I would say is don't do it alone. You know, if you talk to the vocations director, he'll help you out. And honestly, there's not much to be afraid about. You'll have a good time. Even if you end up discerning out, you'll have grown as a human being. So there's no loss to entering the seminary. So,
Mark, one last question. When you think about the priesthood, a lot of times family and friends will say, Mark, why are you making this decision? Why would you be willing to make so many sacrifices? But do you look at it that way? Why is it such a joy to even consider the possibility of becoming a priest?
Yeah, I don't really look at it in terms of sacrifice, although that is there, but I'm gaining a whole lot more, you know. It's my relationship with God really is what sustains me. So being that sign for other people as intimacy with God, you know, it's that's my goal, and that's what I have in mind, and I just want to give myself to God and do His will and serve the church. So,
Bernie, you're coming from a unique situation in that you spent the better part of the last several years as a teacher, something you could have continued doing, but why did you decide to answer the call to the priesthood?
The call had been there for a long time. I think I initially was drawn to it in childhood, but for whatever reason, along the way I got interested in music and education and competed in music in high school and ended up going to college for it, and just became something that I threw myself really into. And the thought of priesthood would come back from time to time, but I guess it really just wasn't time for me to really think seriously about it. I always kind of wrote it off as something that wasn't for me or something that I couldn't do, but there was always an attraction for it. Finally, I'd say around 2011, 2012, the call came back, and this time it was a lot stronger, and I really couldn't ignore it or throw myself into another diversion. And still took me a few more years to get up the courage to get in touch with the vocation director, but then finally 2016, 2017, I made the call, and here we are.
Bernie, this is your second year being part of this annual gathering of seminarians. It's a rare opportunity to get together with everybody who is in our diocese pursuing this dream of becoming a priest. What do you think you're getting out of this experience?
It's really neat. We have quite a mix of ages and interests and personalities. Every one of us is very different from the next. And what is really wonderful, we only see each other together. We're only ever together, all the seminarians, in the same place once or twice a year. And just to be able to connect and relate our experiences in the seminary, you know, maybe a guy who's 20 years old has some of the same difficulties that I have, and I'm, you know, 20 years older than him, or some of the same joys. But the wonderful thing is that we're all united in a way that we're all pursuing this really wonderful, mysterious gift of possibly one day being ordained priests for the Scranton Diocese. And just the love of people and the love of church and the love of God is one common thread that really goes between us all, regardless of age and interests and whatever else about us.
Bernie, you just mentioned the priesthood as being a great gift. When you come across people that might question why you would have been willing to give up a career in teaching in order to go into the seminary, and they question why you'd be willing to make so many sacrifices in order to become a priest, how do you respond to that?
I think the gifts far outweigh the sacrifices. And my own story was not without fear and anxiety. It kept me from really being able to do this for a long time. Fear paralyzes you, but you have to remember, fear doesn't come from God. It comes from the spirit against goodness. And you know, really you have to pray for the faith to be able to make that step, to make that call. You know when it's time, and you know when you can't ignore it anymore, and you just have to call the vocation director. And I can remember I initially contacted him through email, and I spent a couple of days writing that email and wording it so it was just exactly what I wanted to send. And then I sat down to send it, and I couldn't, and paced back and forth the house for a while before I finally could send the email, and finally did. And I got a call a half an hour later, and the greatest adventure has resulted ever since. The best advice I could give somebody who is thinking, even just has a light inkling towards maybe thinking that they might be called to become a priest, is don't be afraid of it. And I tell people anymore, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have experienced nearly the amount of stress and anxiety that I did. I wouldn't have thought twice about this, and I would have done it a long time ago.
That's all the time we have for now. On behalf of the staff at Catholic Television, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and invite you to tune us in again next month for our next edition of Our Faith, Our Diocese.